Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the status report highlight for the 15th of September 2015. This week's status report contains good info from lead producer Brian Hicks regarding the central loot economy, engine work, and the newly introduced combat scrum held over the weekend. As the team prepares for work on 059 experimental release version 1, we'll recap this week any applicable changes to the 058 stable and talk a bit about what to expect with the 059 experimental. Those of you who closely follow dev's personal Twitter accounts might already know some of this information, but not everyone does, so we need to recap this. With the hotfix deployed to stable branch servers, it is important that everyone understands how the cleanup system works, both right now and how it should be operating with 059 stable. Items have a 30-minute lifetime which can be refreshed by picking up the item or directly interacting with it. Base objects, tents, ammo canisters, protector cases, barrels and vehicles have a 45-day lifetime. This will eventually move to 7 days once systems are in place for intuitive lifetime refresh. Backpacks, not including the improvised and crafted types, have a lifetime of 4 hours. Crafted backpacks have a lifetime of 1 hour. When the first 059 experimental build hits, you'll notice a few things we'll be trying. 10 off-road hatchbacks will spawn, 10 civilian sedans will spawn, 5 transit buses will spawn, 5 V3S chassis will spawn, and 3 V3S cargoes will spawn. That's a total of 33 vehicles altogether, ladies and gentlemen, so we're going to have a little bit of an increase in the number of vehicles on the map, and a little bit more variety. These numbers may not carry over to stable, as the intent is to test how both the server handles the amount and the player-to-player vehicle position is handled. In addition, we'll be operating most servers at 75 players in 059 experimental. If we're able to get a server-side performance above the red line at 75 players prior to 059 hitting stable, it will carry over. If not, we'll continue to work towards the 060 experimental. For 059 and 060 both, we're looking at a good amount of engine work being merged into the main branch. Part of this work includes the beginning of basic QA passes against portions of the new renderer. This is internally only, but requires some DLL changes to be present in the main distribution. So don't get too worked up if you see some DLLs referencing Infusion or DirectX 11. Past the programmers merging these engine changes in, they'll still need to be properly configured within the areas of the title that use them by the design team, tested by QA, bug fixed, regression testing, and so on. So don't expect massive changes all at once, which is a good approach to early access in general. And please, if you're participating in the experimental branch, make sure you file bugs at feedback.daisygame.com. Last Saturday we had the first combat scrum with PvP evangelists, and we've compiled the rough notes of what was covered. This initial combat scrum ran a whopping 2 hours and bounced over a myriad of topics. We're looking into the possibility of releasing these as audio MP3s in the future. For this scrum we'll cover the top 4 questions and their responses. Player decent gunshots not being heard, breaking your legs while climbing upstairs. While server-side performance gains were made, this exponentially grew the amount of successful network traffic being handled by the server. No optimizations have been done on this across 2015, and thus obviously has to be priority moving forward. This is a well-known issue internally, and will be a focus moving forward. Network traffic behavior is just not acceptable right now, and must be improved. Improvised bow balancing, changing the aiming style, improving usability. Obviously the current method of using improvised bow in combat is not ideal. It is functional, but we have a good ways to go with it until we're happy. Most of that is either A, going to be affected by upcoming changes to the animation system and player controller, and B, going to come in beta, when our focus shifts from primary feature development to bug fixing. In short, in the end, we most definitely want bow combat to be both viable and rewarding. Weapon sway realism versus fun, using the effect of holding breath to mitigate the cost of weapon sway and stamina. This is a good point. Obviously DayZ is known for and associated with hardcore unforgiving survival simulator, and we want to maintain this moving forward. However, when it comes to systems such as weapon sway, holding breath, and stamina, and how they all play into each other, we need to communicate more clearly to the user exactly what is going on. Part of this can be communicated properly via the upcoming new toggleable UI, and even more can be communicated by properly displaying a more visible change in sway via the hold breath mechanic. As we're currently using placeholder tech from RV in this area, we're not able to do what we want to do with this. As we move closer to beta, we're all excited to move weapon sway and associated holding breath functionality and the new UI towards a more approachable and understandable system. Much like learning to control your sound in DayZ mod, we hope to see players learning through UI and visual cues how to control their weapon sway and use hold breath the most effectively. Are there any plans to reduce player speed, address some sort of inertia system to mitigate players being able to make high-speed 180-degree turns without consequence? Firstly, with player speed. Anyone who plays DayZ mod can tell you how ridiculously fast the DayZ player speed is in comparison. Initially, this was done to help mitigate the limited available methods of transportation in DayZ, as Chernarus is a very large play area, and the decentralization of points of interest by expanding and redesigning Chernarus into Chernarus Plus meant much more travel was needed. As we look forwards towards 059 and beyond, increasing the methods and availability of transportation will be scaling back player movement speed, iteratively, not all at once, when it comes to inertia, dexterity, and all of the potential gameplay areas that can have an impact on the player movement. There is most certainly room for improvement. Keep in mind, however, we can't start effectively implementing and changing how this works in-game until both the new player controller and animation system are merged in and configured for use by the design team. That said, we are most definitely interested in improving how the player handles and expanding the simulation of weight and dexterity upon the momentum of a player character in motion. The next 3 months or so should see some marked improvement and changes to how this is handled. And that's all for this week's Status Report highlight for the week of the 15th of September, 2015. As always, I recommend you read the Status Report in full for yourselves for the most amount of information that they hold. All links will be in the description, as well as for DayZ TV for your latest DayZ news and information. And I'll see you peeps next time.